1st of January. Over the personal policy handbook, if you follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I have one for you too.
You said be quiet.
Pardon? Single and zero. That's the withholdings that you had, or how you filed last year was single and zero.
Okay, I thought maybe you forgot.
No, no. Thank you.
I don't know if this is done.
I just need to know how many withholdings that you want. And you had married in 3 last year. Okay.
That time table was on one.
I believe it is.
Oh, I gotta read that.
What did you think? What kind of changes are you thinking on as far as?
Well, a lot.
Okay, well, where do you want to
Well,
start?
I think, wasn't sure what your guys' attention today was. To me, the first step is we have to decide how we're going to address changing the employee policy book. I've talked to some other counties, did a little bit of research, spoke to Deb, and when it comes down to it, we have 3 options. We can totally start from scratch, take what we have and just work through it. We can use the K-Camp as a model. It's a pretty good base. I touch base with K-Camp, we use them. Not only then can I look over it for legal, but legal from K-Camp will look over it. Our third option is we could retain someone, hire someone to essentially come in and do a study and have them write an employee policy handbook at that point. If we do that, there are a few companies out there. There are a few counties that have used, I think there are 2 big ones that have been used in Kansas.
The Austin Peters and then Evergreen Solutions.
And I've looked at some counties that have used both of them. I mean, some of the stuff I've seen from Austin Peters looks really good. Another option of using a group like that is they can also help us write job descriptions. So I think the first step is that, and I'll tell you, in looking at our employee policy handbook and speaking to county employees and kind of looking at what some other counties have, we have some huge issues that need to be addressed. It's not minor tweakings, it's not something that could happen in a single meeting. Some of the problems I'm seeing is, for instance, sheriff's office being on what's called 28K. which is a 28-day system, different than what the other departments look at. There's no clear policy on that. I know there's been some prior legal concerns, and I think that's probably something that needs to be clearly laid out of if there's going to be a department that has a different system. A few other issues, comp time. There's no clear policy on that, but there are employees who are receiving comp time. There's no clear tracking process, how that's accounted. It's really on the honor system, and I think it's dangerous to the county and to the employee and their rights to not have a clear written policy on that. There's also no true guidance on overtime or on-call time for our agencies that don't get to work the kind of normal 8 to 5. So when you're looking at EMS, emergency management, sheriff's office, there's no clear direction on how on-call time is treated. And then a few other issues that I've come across is treatment of overtime, especially on those departments. For instance, road and bridge even, working holidays, how that works, and then longevity and bonuses. I think those are all issues where there's kind of policies informally floating around there, but there's nothing in writing and there's nothing in our employee policy handbook to even build upon now. And when it comes down to when I look at those, I see not only liability issues for the county, but serious issues for guidance and I think probably morale for the county employees and not knowing on the front end how things are going to turn out. So those are the big issues that I've seen in reviewing everything. And I think the first step is going back to the 3 options I outlined, deciding how you want to tackle this issue. Because I'll tell you, I don't think there's any resolving the issue today.
Right.
Today it's going to be a question of what sort of game plan do you want to have to hopefully get something solid in place before the end of the year.
What are you leaning towards? Are you leaning more towards K-Camp? I don't think starting from scratch is.
Yeah,
really good.
I would prefer K-Camp or hiring somebody.
Okay.
You know, I've looked at some counties who have used both Austin Peters and Evergreen. I wasn't particularly impressed with what I saw from Evergreen personally. Some of the stuff I saw coming out of Austin Peters was quality work. I mean, I was very impressed as one, just being a citizen, to see such clear guidance, and two, I think as an attorney I was impressed. You might want to consider just getting a bid from them to see what it looks like, and then at that point make a decision about whether or not we want to hire someone or if we want to start with K-Camp. I think K-Camp, if we decide to go that route, is a very good starting place. I don't know if you've had a chance to look through the manual that Deb sent out. My assessment is, I think what we're looking somewhere between 3 to 6-ish maybe if we hire someone for this.
For a policy handbook. That's what Austin Peters, and I'm sure that we would have to rebid this, but last fall, they submitted a bid to the county for a policy handbook as well as revising the job descriptions and wage agreements. And at that time, to review and rewrite the policy handbook was $3,000. So
I think it might be worth considering and getting bids, and here's why. I think there's a benefit, both legally and efficiency-wise, to having someone objective come in and look at the policies and meet with the departments and determine what it is they do and make recommendations to the board. But for, I think, the county to make an educated decision about whether or not that's worth it, you're gonna have to see bids before you make a decision, because it may not be worth it.
I've read this through on the internet, and then I had this printed out a couple of days ago, and I've read it through several times. And just page 49 gives us definitions of employees, and we're nowhere near that in this antiquated
document that we have, I did not know that an appointed official, that we were required to do a resolution to appoint them to that job. I didn't know that, but it's right here. And this was updated sometime last year.
And keep in mind, we're also required yearly to identify salary amounts for those same appointed employees by
Absolutely,
resolution.
yeah. So there's, I just stammer and stutter when I look at this current employee handbook. Then they talk about an exempt employee and a non-exempt employee. And they refer to the Fair Labor Standards Act. So we need to come in compliance with federal law. That is
Yes.
what it boils down to.
Yeah.
And that's why you were just saying, there appears to be an area where we might be legally in trouble.
Well, and I mean, that's the first step is, do you guys even want to consider getting bids to see what sort of services you want? Or do you just want to go with K-Camp? I think that's probably, I would strongly advise against starting from scratch and doing our
Right.
own. I don't think that's worked in the past. I don't think it'll work in the future. What I want to caution here is there's a ton of work to be done here, because I think part of revisiting the employee policy handbook is revisiting job descriptions. You know, revisiting how we actually, the wage agreements. I think the way that we kind of treat hourly employees as salaried employees create a lot of problems that we're gonna need to revisit when we rewrite the policy handbook. And job descriptions and then payroll, I think, is all gonna be a part of this. So it's gonna be, I think, a ton of work.
Okay.
And I don't want to discourage you, I just want to make sure we set reasonable expectations on the front end so that you guys can make an informed decision.
And you like Austin Peters with retaining outside services because we're going to get an objective view of it.
I think there's a benefit to at least, and keep in mind, we would get a recommendation from them and then it would be up to us whether or not to accept that recommendation. I think there's a value to having a third, you know, objective party come in and interact with the departments and make recommendations to the board. If we did open it up to bids, I think independent of what I'm seeing in the quality, I mean, we want to get bids from various companies
Okay.
to see what the options are. And those bids, if we're gonna do that, we probably wanna, one, get a bid for rewriting our employee policy handbook, but also go ahead and see what they would charge if we would also have them do job descriptions and new wage agreements.
I think several places in this document right here, they mention job descriptions and how to apply the criteria for evaluating the employee with a job description. And that's, you can't even begin to do that until you have a current job description. So,
And they based those costs, or this one from Austin Peters, the job description was based on how many job descriptions you had in your county as by,
well, yeah, well,
uh,
I mean, you
How does
got-
that work where we don't have any, though? Do we just give them the positions and the
Yeah.
county?
what I gave them before was like the basic positions in the county. And we've added a few since then, added some new ones that I didn't give them because they weren't there a year ago. So it might be a little higher than that because we might have added a few more jobs that need to be written for. So I do still have the contact for the Austin Peters group. And then this one was the Evergreen. And I believe there's a contact number in here as well.
What do you guys think?
I think we ought to go with the contract. I think the enormity of the job is just beyond our capabilities. I'll be honest. I don't think we have the time nor the the knowledge to do a decent job for our employees.
Ed?
I gotta agree, but I think there are legal concerns, we better get somebody else to do
Yeah,
it.
I think out of the two, between K-Camp and then retain somebody, I think we can start off the process by getting bids and then get it, make sure when we get the bids, we're looking at the policy handbook, job description, salary and wages. I mean, and then I guess we can go from there. at that
So-
point.
When we meet again, if the county clerk has some bids, then we can make a decision, I guess, at that time.
We need to make a motion to start the bidding process because it's over 500, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
I'll make a motion that we solicit bids for an employee handbook.
You can have the job description thing under.
Oh, and job description.
Salary and wages as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We'll make short work of this meeting.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. All right, well, what else is there to do?
Ask
Dave?
them what they need.
Yeah, what do you guys need?
I was just curious, what does K-Camp offer? I mean, they're not gonna come out and review us. What's that?
I can let you have this copy to read over.
I can email you.
I just didn't know what they was doing. so.
Essentially what it is it's a form that you can fill in, take parts out, add parts to it. You know, I think it's
Coming
a,
out.
it's a form, and it's a okay place to start. But I think at least, I will tell you, I've looked, is it Montgomery County, Deb, that's worked with Austin Peters?
Harvey.
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 The Harvey was the one I was most impressed with, and they actually hired someplace, and why I was impressed by that is K-Camp's good, but it's still a form, and it didn't cover your road and bridge, your guys are out working unusual hours. You got the sheriff's office, people out at EMS, and I think the problem with K-Camp is it doesn't do a good enough job addressing the issues that come up with people who don't kind of have your normal 8 to 5 desk job that most, I think, of the county employees have. So I think K-Camp covers kind of a desk job well. I don't think it addresses some of the issues that we're seeing with vacation time on holidays and comp leave that an employee that's kind of on call 24/7 encounters.
Yeah, I wouldn't work K-Camp did anything, and that's when they did the standard formal ones.
It's kind of a fill in the blank.
Yeah.
You can
I can send
tailor
it to you if you're
Oh, no, I
interested.
mean,
Yeah,
if they're gonna go with the other, that's fine. So,
yeah. And I can send it to you too, Dave. I've got it saved on my computer.
No, I just like to offer up a comment too. Well, I think there's benefit in like these template models that you're talking about. I think there's bigger benefit in having them come out and actually interact with the departments. Simply because we all know in small counties, what a department does here is different than somebody at the county. A lot of us wear multiple hats and have been assigned additional job duties. So if you just go off of a template model of, say, an emergency manager or a road and bridge, in reality, we actually have been assigned other job duties because we are a smaller county.
Right.
And then one other consideration I wanted to make sure, because you're talking a lot about the compensation and the job descriptions and the payroll, but there's other considerations in the handbook. Social media. I know that in our current handbook, we're not supposed to be using it. However, like emergency management, one of our primary tools that we use is Facebook to get the word out, and that's done at the state level as well. So to get our website to be promoted, we needed to have a social media presence as well. So we're actively violating our current handbook, but doing so for the benefit of the county. We believe that those types of things, electronic email, how it's handled, use of computer equipment in the courthouse and with, you know, company assets, those types of things I hope we can cover as well. And the ethical use thereof, and purchasing, you know, procedures, having a bidding process, those types of things.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Judy, did you have anything on? Noah? Okay.
Do we have any housekeeping duties we need to do before we adjourn? Did you get all of those wage agreements done?
I'm waiting on one to come back, and I think we have all but one. But with payroll coming up, I do need to know from the board where you want the IT pay to be expensed.
We discussed that, but we never made a decision. I think we ought to move money from courthouse general to computer, and that's where it always used to be.
Okay.
And just, let's not reinvent the wheel here.
I agree.
So, well, I need a motion to do that, yeah.
Yes.
Let's do it as a motion. Let's see, that was 3% added to that,
It'd be $412 times 12 months.
okay. Okay, I'll make a motion. Yeah, let's round it up $1. Make a motion that we move $4,945 from courthouse general to computer personnel.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
I think another minor thing that we can address, you guys asked me to look into the rules of order that you're using about whether or not a second is required. And if I get rid of Robert's rules book, according to the desk book, for county commissioners, it is not unusual for a three-member body to not require seconds on motions, and I checked Robert's rules as well. And there's a notation here on page 34 that discusses the seconding of motions, that motions need not be seconded in a small board or committee. So if you guys have adopted Robert's Rules of Orders as your rules of order for the board, it would allow you as a small board of 3 members to not use a second. But ultimately, that's a decision, you guys can decide whether or not you're gonna require seconds or not. I just know that's something that you had asked me to look into, so,
So from there, if somebody makes a motion, then we just go right to vote.
yes. And ultimately, that's a decision that you guys make as a board, how you want to do that. You could require a second for all motions, or, you know, I've called around and it's not, I think it's probably like 50-50, you know, some boards require a motion, some don't, but you're allowed to do so under Robert's Rules of Order, so I just wanted to throw that out there.
We can use
It's
it when
always
we
been
want to,
tradition
when we
here
don't
that
want
we
to,
did
we don't
it.
have to.
Sorry?
I'd say we can use it when we want to, and don't have to when we don't have to, right?
I think we ought to.
I think a consistent approach on which rules of order you apply would be nice.
And just because the commissioner seconded it, doesn't mean he's approving of the motion, are we correct?
That just-
Correct.
Yeah, right, it just
Right.
means that you want it brought to a vote. Yeah.
And I mean, ultimately, I mean, the rule of, the purpose of a second is to prevent an issue going to a vote where you only have, you know, one person supporting it. And so sort of the philosophy behind not doing that on a small board is where the difference between it going to a vote and not is really one person. There's not that concern, but ultimately it's in your discretion about which procedure you want to follow. But it's completely permissible to say second,
Me too.
permissible to just move on to a vote.
I said, I like it, I think we ought to keep it, so.
Well, it's been tradition, I kind of agree there.
Okay. I'll leave it the same.
All right.
We'll let it stand.
Anybody else have anything else? Yes.
So you guys, a couple times this, any more discussion on the sick leave time?
Okay.
You know, if they're maxed out, what
On
we're gonna be doing
transferring?
with it, whether we're gonna increase it, whether there's gonna be something added into it, they retire, you know, they, like the state does, they pay out half of it, so. Something I think we need to look at.
We need to make sure they look at that when they do this, so. Handbook, yeah.
And I have a list of things that I would like to see addressed once we actually hire someone, and I think Most have even been addressed by people out in the crowd right now, so I have a working list of items that I wanna make sure get covered.
I also have a working list that was left by the former clerk of changes that needed to be made to it.
I do have one thing I'd like to comment on before we adjourn. Senator Turner, he has resurrected Senate Bill 316 again. He has amended it to start this year. I think it was July 1st. That means on budget cycle for what we do, we have to move everything back probably almost 2 months. Because if we go over on the budget, we gotta have time to publish a notice to bring it to a vote.
Okay.
He didn't amend the other things that have to be done, like the treasurer has to do a report in the spring where the treasurer makes the best estimate that can be done on how motor vehicle taxes are going to come in for that year. And property tax, back taxes are going to come in. There's several things that the treasurer has to do.
And this has not been passed, this has just been
No,
introduced
but-
for this legislative session.
This is an election year, and I don't see anybody bucking it because they would then appear that they're for more taxes. Let's talk about reality here.
Rodney, would you have the commissioners sign that transfer sheet so that we can do that before payroll?
Oh,
What is this for?
yeah,
For the
yeah.
IT pay
Oh, okay.
that you guys just decided. So that we can have something, a hard copy that authorizes to do that.
That was 4,945.
So what did we have in the computer fund already?
Nothing. It wasn't budgeted for.
Okay.
I think the personnel line had zero. I
Right.
think there's money in there, but it's not
The personnel line item in the computer
Oh,
fund has.
that's all you're saying, you're adding it to not just computer. There
Right,
was a
it's
computer
specifically
fund.
to the personnel line item.
Philip,
Okay.
I think that was.
Right.
just out of curiosity, what is the computer fund for?
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity.
Okay.
Computer fund, there's services and things that we have to maintain. Most of them are contractual that are paid out there. Some of the paper that Jean uses in her office is paid out there because everybody uses her copy machine in there. And so we budget for some paper out of there.
It needs to know about the same.
So it's not for actual experience.
Oh, yes.
I thought it was.
Willie Martinez,
Think so.
he had 2 checks, an ambulance check and a fire check.
Okay.
They were put in the same envelope. He cashed one of them, but not the other one, and now he's telling us he can't find that check. And he wants a check reissued to him.
Okay.
So on the check, it says 180 days. And that was my suggestion, was to wait the 180 days to see if he finds it, but he says he cannot find that check. It was just issued at the end of December. So how do you guys want to handle that? Do you want us to just reissue him a check?
Cancel the old one?
How big a check?
Oh, 236, somewhere in there.
It's not like a payroll check where it's gonna,
It is a payroll check.
oh, it is a payroll
It
check?
is a payroll check, and
For amount too much, or is voluntary?
Oh, I see.
Fire.
It's volunteer.
it is a payroll check, and there are withholdings and things that came out of there, and
Is that gonna mess up your W-2s and your accounting?
it affects a lot of things.
Can't you just stop payment on that check and reissue a new one?
Well,
That's probably the best thing.
what we did before was just type out a check. We didn't run it through the system. Because if you go and void that check, then you're voiding withholdings and all of that. So we've just typed that, and I would need you guys to sign it, or somebody to 2 signatures. We've just typed it out and sent it. There's some other employees that had like 2014 checks that they never did cash. And so we just typed them out. And I guess that's how the former clerk and the treasurer had decided to do it, and that's fine. And that way it doesn't mess up with your withholdings. But I didn't know whether the board wanted to wait the 180 days or
I would rather just get it done. I don't wanna make him wait.
just get it done. Okay, let me get a check.
What do you think?
Well, it's not a big amount.
It's not that much
And
money.
I would hope the gentleman would be honorable enough not to cash both of them.
No, I don't.
I just need the top line, and Dolores will sign it, I'll sign it. But when, I have to have Shirley type it out. We have it saved in a file, but like I say, it's like $236 and some odd cents or something.
So I just wanted to get things.
Yeah.
Makes me a little nervous.
You wanna go
Is that
back?
okay to sign a blank check?
If you wanna wait, I will have Shirley type it out,
How long will it take her?
not very long.
Let's
I'll-
have her type it out.
Yes, probably.
I think we were like.
And then Brian had a good question on computers, what are we using that fund for? I thought we could purchase some computers with it, and I didn't quite hear she.
I thought you have your own line item in your own department for computer equipment. So I thought that's the courthouse computers, like the server and anything up on the server, the computer connected to that. But each department would have their own computer line item in their own budget. That's how I
So
understood it.
nobody's able to use computer money out of the computer fund?
Not really, it doesn't really affect the individual departments, it's kind of on its own. And a lot of legal subscriptions and things like that to maintain that. I mean, we still have to have our server on site, we can't completely do away with it, so.
So it's there to purchase infrastructure computers, not end user computers.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
So fancy.
No, I'm just getting it right.
Big technological words.
I was gonna say I'm surrounded by IT people in my office.
Osmosis.
So the 2 companies you want me to get bids from would be Evergreen and Austin Peters.
Well, if there's other ones.
Contact them,
Yeah, I would reach out to as many as you can.
okay. I can send out an email to the other clerks and see who they've used.
It sounds like Austin Peters has done a very good job, it sounds like in the past.
It would still be nice to see bids from other places.
Yep.
There's something to compare it to.
Nobody else said anything else? All right.
Okay.
Here's the checks.
And this bill is going to hurt us.
We'll start tracking it.
Last year, they put some caveats in the bill about infrastructure. This guy's taking them out. In other words, if we lose 3 bridges in 1 year, we're kind of up the creek because we maybe only budgeted for 1. I don't know, did you get a copy of this? Or, I'll give you my
No,
copy.
I'll just track it all electronically
Okay,
online,
all right.
that's easier now.
But it needs to be looked at because it's gonna affect the way we do business.
I'll
And
just
it's
start-
anybody west of Hayes. All of the small counties are gonna be in the same boat on this.
If somebody wants to make a motion to adjourn, I'll walk in there and sign that check. Or do you agree?
I don't, we adjourn.
Top line, please.
Can I hear a second?
I'll make a second.
Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Thanks, folks, for coming.
Yep, thanks.